Welcome back to our coverage, Newhouse Sports Media Center's coverage here at the Super Bowl. And we're joined by a Syracuse alum, a Syracuse native, and one of the leading voices in really all of sports, softball, football, basketball, you name it. I think her Twitter bio is just sports. It's Beth Mowins. Beth, thanks so much for joining us once again this year.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
So what's up in your world right now? I know gearing up for softball season, but where are you at? What's up with you?
Yeah, so this time of year, obviously watching a lot of football, getting excited, to watch the Super Bowl, and then work related. I'm running around with a lot of college basketball right now, and hard to believe, but once we turn the calendar over to February, it's only 2 weeks away from our softball coverage that we throw out the first pitch every year at the Clearwater Invitational down in Florida. So, really looking forward to that as well.
What is it like working with that crew with softball? I mean, you guys have been working together for what, 18 years now? You, Holly, Michelle, Jess Mendoza. What is that group like on a year-to-year basis?
Well, I hope first and foremost what comes across to fans watching at home is how much fun we're having. And it's, I think it really shows the experience that we have together with 18 years of continuous coverage of a national championship, which I believe is the longest running announced team out there in sports today. So we're always excited to get the season going, and then once things start getting amped up, it's just a matter of being conversational, informative, entertaining, and just enjoying each other's company like we have over all these years.
What's the most special part about Clearwater that just makes it feel like the right place to start the season?
Well, it's probably an opportunity to sit in Michelle Smith's wine cellar. She's quite the onophile, and we're the day crew this year. That happens to be when more of the ESPN and ESPN2 windows are. So it's just great to be out amongst the fans during the day. Hopefully, we have nice sunny skies this year after a lot of rain last year, and then perhaps enjoying a little sip of Michelle's finest vino in the evening, and again celebrating each other's company and being around softball once again.
I know you brag about your thesaurus, but onophile is new to my book as well. We're only a few minutes in. I've learned something, so I'm happy.
It's just another way to say wine snob.
Thank you. I haven't graduated to that level yet. As
Oh.
a college kid, I think I'm still down the ranks. You mentioned also a few minutes ago college hoop season. You've been busy there as well. And one of the really cool moments earlier in the season, you and Debbie Antonelli calling Louisville, Indiana, in that moment with her and her son Patrick coming into that game. Can you just walk me through how she was feeling, maybe how Patrick was feeling headed into the day, and then obviously the situation late in the game where history happens there on the court?
Yeah. So Debbie and I have been calling games together for almost 30 years now, and that's another one. You've been around the business a long time when you can say you're the longest standing duo of working together continuous seasons on one sport like Debbie and I have. So I've known Patrick since he was a little kid, and he's always been a Louisville fan. Had a terrific undergrad career, and then had a chance to go to Louisville to kind of live out his dream to be a Cardinal, and he wants to get into coaching. So he's in a great spot there with Pat Kelsey. And of course, Debbie and I knew that was a possibility that he might get into a game that we were calling. And so we were ready for the moment. Again, we wanted to have fun with it. We wanted to let Patrick and Debbie have their moment together. And I think our entire crew really did a terrific job. She was more nervous about that, I think, than anything she's ever done in her life. So it was really cool just to see her reaction, to see a moment where Patrick, as he was getting ready to check into the game, we caught him sort of glancing over at his mother. And what was off camera at that time was the Louisville coaching staff. And as they sent Patrick over to the scorer's table, they were all looking over at Debbie. And it was just a great moment, I think, for the entire Louisville family and the entire Antonelli family. And she relished it all.
Yeah, that was really something special, and happy that social media did its thing there and blew it up because Debbie is one of the leading names in the sport from the
Yeah.
coverage perspective. And And Louisville back where it should be, right? Pat Kelsey and company. Unfortunately, they came up to the Dome and they took one against Syracuse a couple weeks ago. But
Yeah.
the program getting back to where it should be for sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping, what has been the narrative sort of around ACC men's basketball the last several years really is not the depth that we're used to seeing around the ACC, yet they still send a handful of teams to the NCAA tournament, and a couple of them make deep runs. Case in point, the NC State men last year getting to the Final Four. So we'll see if that is the case again around the ACC. We need some good hoops highlights. On the women's side, of course, Notre Dame is looking every bit like a national championship contender, and there may be a few other teams, I think, that have a really good chance of getting to the Final Four.
When was the last time you saw a backcourt as good as Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles?
Wow. They are so dynamic, and I would even throw Citron in the mix there. The three of them are just incredible together. And I think they all bring a little something different to the table. They're going to be such a tough out in the postseason because, as you guys know, guard play is so significant, especially on the women's side when you get into the Sweet 16, Elite Eight, and Final Four. I don't know that we've seen one as versatile and as deep as that group in a while.
No, it's what Hidalgo's done since her freshman year. Miles coming off the injury. Citron had her injury problems too.
Yeah.
Having them healthy, Niele Ivy. If that team can stay healthy, watch out.
Yeah,
That's
we're going to see them quite a bit too. They have Stanford, ESPN coming up Super Bowl week, and then the Monday after they host Duke on ESPN. So you'll get a good glimpse of just how good that group is together. And when you add Maddie Westbeld, the ability, I think, to continue to share the ball and to find the hot hand night in, night out will be a big difference maker for them.
Kara Lawson's defense against Niele
Yeah.
Ivy's offense. That's going to be must watch for sure. I know you're getting ready for that. One more thing
That
I
that
wanted.
that Duke backcourt's awfully good too, and with the defense they play, that's one of those teams that has a real good shot at the Final Four if they get the right matchups.
Right, especially defense is going to give you wins and keep you in games on a nightly basis. Top 10 team right now in Duke on the women's side. One more thing I wanted to catch up with you on. I know it was a really long time ago, back in July, the all women's broadcast. I know you filled in the last few years with the Cubs, and then this past July, being able to be a part of that. I know you've done similar, kinds of broadcasts for the
Mhm.
NBA over the last few years as well. But to do that for Marquee, what was that moment like? How did you think it went?
That was a great time because both Taylor and Elise are total pros, and again, I think the ability to be informative, be strategic, but also to be entertaining and to have a lot of fun doing it. And that comes from preparation, that comes from confidence. And those two are both are loaded with that, and we just had a great time together. I think it went really well. And I think the exciting thing for all of us, whether it's with the Cubs or whether it's NBA or NFL or any sport out there, I think we are really at the pivot point, if you will, where the next time that it's an all-female broadcast, there is no public relations release, there is no big moment or big announcement. It's just three women showing up to call a game together, and they happen to be doing it on the same night. I think we're at that moment now where it's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah, that's always the goal, is just to make
Yep.
it feel like there's no difference whatsoever and it's just going up, showing the work. I know you grew up in a family that loves sports. You've been calling games since you were 8 years old, doing NFL games to the TV. You've been doing this forever. Now you're just doing it in front of an audience, and that always shows through when you're broadcasting. And how do you think how important is it to just make sure you're broadcasting to the fan whenever you're getting behind the mic?
I think it comes from being a former athlete myself as well as a fan. So kind of bringing that perspective of, what's going on in the huddle, what's going on in the locker room, what's it feel like to have the ball in your hands late in the game, making all the key decisions in big moments. And then understanding that I want somebody who's talking to me like they are sitting on my couch at home and they're right there next to me. And that's always the approach I've tried to bring whenever I'm calling a game is to always remember, I want to put myself in somebody's living room or basement or wherever, or the bar where they happen to be watching the game, and as if they're a part of our conversation.
I know when you were at grad school at Syracuse, correct me if I'm wrong, you played pickup occasionally with Felicia Leggett.
A time or two, yes.
And then you played before at Lafayette, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, when I was in high school, we used to play pickup games. But believe it or not, there used to be a basketball court in Manley Fieldhouse, right? And that's where the men and women played for years. And when I was in high school, or when I was at Lafayette, and I'd come home over the summer, that's where everybody would go to play pickup games. So I was familiar with Coach Leggett's sharp elbows from a very young age, because we were playing with each other and against each other when I was at CNS and she was at Nottingham. That's how far back we go, and it's exciting to see. The women's Final Four that I called, of course, was the UConn Syracuse championship game, and to see all the Syracuse alums there was such a cool moment. And now to see Felicia, I know they've had some struggles at times this year, but it was a great season last year. And I'm excited about the future of the women's basketball program with Coach Leggett.
Hey, you saw a couple of those sharp elbows when Syracuse almost beat NC State a couple days
Yes.
ago. You
Oh, they had them.
remember
They were right there.
they were. They really were picking up a signature win waiting this season, but they got a couple McDonald's All-American nominees coming in next year. I think
Yeah.
to the
I, I,
Augusta.
I think the exciting thing is too now for the women's, for the ACC tournament, not everybody goes. And so it's an intriguing bottom of the ACC bubble, if you will, that teams don't, you need to be in the top 15. I think that is a big push down the stretch here, is to get into the ACC tournament. And then, take your chances. Anybody can win that thing over the course of 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, Notre Dame wasn't the highest seed when they went into that tournament last year, but they emerged the most talented team. And that's when people started to realize, okay, this even if it's a 50-60% Notre Dame team, they can still go toe to toe with anybody. So we'll see
Yep.
how it shakes up down the stretch here in the spring. Let's shift our gears to the game at hand that we're covering here in New Orleans with Philadelphia and Kansas City. You know, what do you think of this narrative that some fans are a little sick of Kansas City, even though they could be on the verge of history? Where do you stand on that line?
Well, I think there's 50, was it 55 million people that would disagree. I think that was the number that watched the AFC Championship game. And, it'll be double that for the Super Bowl. I think it's one of the fun conversations that we have in sports whenever there's a dynasty. You have, a lot of people that love to watch the pursuit of perfection. They love to watch the pursuit of history. We've seen it, in other sports over the years. The UConn women's basketball comes to mind. Oklahoma softball right now in the midst of their four-peat, going to go for 5 this spring. People love to watch the performance of athletes at the highest level. And there are those that want them to get that three-peat that hasn't happened in the Super Bowl era. And then, of course, there are a lot of other fans that love to see the dynasty fall. And so I think there will be a ton of eyeballs on it. I think whichever side you fall on, you're going to watch. We're drawn to a dynasty, whether we're pulling for them to win it or pulling for them to fall short. And I think there's just some great storylines with Mahomes, with Kelsey, with Taylor Swift, with Saquon Barkley, one of the great free agent pickups of all time, if he goes on to not only win the rushing title but also win the world championship. So, one of the greatest moves ever for him, from the Giants to the Eagles. So, I think there's a tremendous intrigue here, and a lot to root for or root against.
Yeah, I don't know who to root for, considering I'm a Giants fan, and I see Saquon and that Kelly Green, and it just looks too good to be true. Some,
Oof. Yeah. Oh, I know there's a lot of angst, I'm sure.
yeah, he pulled off that backwards hurdle, and I think Tiki Barber was doing the color, and he's like, "I'm sure Giants fans feel." I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't need to be reminded that we once had him at one point in time."
Yeah.
Growing up in Central New York, did you grow up a Bills fan?
So back in those days, I did not actually. you didn't have every game on TV. So you had Bills, Jets, Giants, and then you had whatever the national broadcast was. And back in those days, it was all Cowboys and Steelers and Raiders and Dolphins. So that's our family was spread out over all of those national teams because the Giants and the Jets and the Bills back in those days were just not very good. So I was actually drawn to Roger Staubach and Tony Dorsett and the Cowboys of the mid to late 70s. And then their dynasty in the 90s, I was still on board.
What'd you think of that hire a couple days ago? Schottenheimer, Brian Schottenheimer getting the promotion under
It
Jerry Jones.
it's been a long drought and a lot of questionable moves since their last championship and their last Super Bowl appearance. So we'll see if it turns out to be an amazing hire or if I don't know how far down the list Schottenheimer was of their on their wish list. But we'll see. There's a lot of talent there to work with, and whether or not he can bring them together. It's certainly not the sexy hire that I think a lot of Cowboys fans were expecting.
Well, when you float Deion Sanders in there and you end up with somebody who is on the old staff, it's definitely kind of throwing your fans for a loop emotionally a little bit.
Yes, yes. Especially then after the Raiders pick up, Pete Carroll, the big name hire just a couple of days after that. That's going to be something to watch. I know for being around the Raiders as I have in recent years. Can he be the one to finally turn that franchise around? I think for NFL fans, you love to see some of those big names of the past when they're good. There seems to be a lot of attention around those teams. So we'll find out soon.
Yeah, what were your impressions of that hire? An established name and somebody who, who knows how long he'll be within that job, just like people are, talking about Bill Belichick at UNC, how long is he going to be there? But still having that name in that locker room. I mean, the chance to set that culture is something you got to take.
Yeah, he's been a winner, right, at every step of the way. And I think one of the important things for a franchise like the Raiders in the entertainment capital of the world now, you've got to be able to not only draft well, but attract free agents and attract guys that want to go play for the Raiders. And that's going to be, I think, a big part of what Pete Carroll does. He has always seemed to be a player's coach. So I know Raider fans are hoping that that's going to be a big part of the draw is they're going to get some names in there that are still at or near the top of their game that want to be Raiders.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully we could get if Patrick Mahomes can keep it up in the AFC West, we find a world where the Raiders are meeting up with him one of those years in the playoffs, because that would be must watch if they can
Oh
get to
yeah,
that point.
yeah.
One of my last questions for you, Beth, and again, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. You know, the joke is that sometimes when you're a Newhouse student, they ruin TV for you, and you watch a game in a ways where, or radio, the same thing. You listen in ways that you never would if you were the casual fan.
Mhm.
When you're watching Super Bowl 59, Chiefs Eagles, broadcasted on Fox this year with Burkhardt and Tom Brady doing the color. Are there one or two things that you're going to be listening for, watching for, that maybe you would recommend the casual fan pays a little more attention to?
Oof. They have all the bells and whistles. They have everything they need to show us all that there is to see around the Super Bowl. So I do listen as an announcer, and I'm always curious about finding the subtle little things. And I look forward to when they give credit to a wide receiver who has a nice block on the edge, when they give credit to a fullback who's the first guy through the line or a blitz pickup that leads to a huge play. I like those subtle little sidelights. Show me a route where, Kelsey just shakes somebody out of his socks. Things like that are the little things that I appreciate a good play-by-play and analyst or a producer in the truck that is picking up on those kinds of things. And those are some of the things I look forward to the most in a big game like this.
Yeah, it's definitely, people just think it's the analyst with the telestrator, and that's the only way you get to that point. But it really takes a group of two or three to five people in that moment to make that visual pop
Yeah.
up on a screen and to highlight, like you said, the third or fourth reason why a play went well or didn't go well, not just the one that you can see when you're just watching from home.
And I'm a graphics snob. I call myself a frustrated associate producer. That's the person who runs the graphics. I love to see a graphic that is so informative. It tells me something I didn't know before, and it does it in a simplistic way. So that's the other thing I like to watch for are those graphics, especially the ones as the game progresses that lets me know, wow, these guys are on top of it. They understand what's happening in game. They understand what's significant about these moments. That's the other thing I really look forward to.
Hey, as a former associate producer at Citrus TV here on campus at Syracuse, my brain is unfortunately wired that way too. If you
Yes.
see a good graphic or a bad graphic, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
catch our attention. And we'll be checking out all the graphics and all the replays, and we'll be thinking about you and thinking about all the big things you're doing this spring with everything that you're involved with. So, Beth, thank you so much for joining us a little bit here during our coverage of the Super Bowl.
Thank you so much. Getting ready for Q-Slack season 2. Big expectations this year. Let's go Orange.
Let's see if they can get back to championship weekend on the men's and the women's side. Lacrosse season
Yes.
already on the hill. Here we are in New Orleans covering everything with the Super Bowl. Thanks so much, Beth.
Thanks, guys.